Hey, I'm David Liggett with Data Center Hawk. I am very excited to be joined by Chief Operating Officer of Cyxtera, Randy Rowland. We talked 4 years ago, and he's back here again today. So, Randy, thank you so much for being here. I think those that are watching would know, but Chief Operating Officer with Cyxtera, and we were really thankful you're here. It was 4 years ago we did this, and so thanks again for coming in.
Yeah, time flies.
It does.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. For those that don't know, and a lot's changed with Cyxtera too over the last 4 years, but just talk about your role as Chief Operating Officer and kind of what the path that led you to that.
Yeah, so if I think about my path, I actually started my career as an IT engineer, and I quickly moved into sales engineering because I liked working with customers primarily. I liked understanding what the requirements are and come up with creative solutions. So I did that for a while, and then I was asked to join the product team, and I think that is where I learned most of what I use today in my current role. And what I mean by that is that when you're creating a new product, there's just a lot of different touch points within an organization that you have to, you have to actually negotiate with. So the first one is you got to meet with customers and understand what they want.
Yeah.
Right. And what you have to do in product development is now that you have customer feedback, you got to meet with the technology teams, and you have to figure out how to build something out of nothing. Right.
Yeah.
You have to build something from scratch, either a piece of software or a technology solution. And so there's the engineering and R&D component of product development. And once you do that, then you also have to figure out how to set a price that's competitive to the customer, but also lets you hit your profit targets.
Yeah.
So pricing and understanding market pricing is a really important part. You have to work with finance to figure out how to raise capital and actually make investments and see the returns come back. You have to work with marketing to come up with a value proposition on what will resonate in the market, also setting pricing. You have to work with sales. I always like to, any new product I built, I wanted to sell personally the first 10. Because then I get to work out the kinks, and then I also know it can be sold.
Yeah, sure.
So when I go to sales and get them moving, and so you end up touching every part. You end up touching legal because you got to set up contracts and service level agreements. You work with accounting to make sure everything's flowing correctly. You work with the executive team because a lot of what you build in products becomes part of the investment story and raising funds and attracting new investors. And so I think that kind of prepared me for this role. I eventually became the general manager of a business unit, which is kind of a precursor to this position. And so I leveraged those lessons I learned even to today. And I work to help actually develop the leadership team to deliver those same things. And so having actually worked through that for as many years as I did is actually why I think helped me to this position. It's something I still leverage.
When you were younger, maybe going through school or just out of school, I mean, did you have the vision that this is what you would want to do one day? Or is this, as you maybe went along in those different roles, you kind of saw, hey, this could lead to this and this could lead to this? And
you know, I didn't. I think the thing that I did think back then is I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to build and grow a business. And to do that, you have to start coming up with ideas. And I'd like to say that every single product I ever built was successful, but you got to bump your, you got to bump your toe every once in a while and learn from that. But I have had a good success, a good track record, and I'm fundamentally still an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
that's really, I think, what's carried me through, because you'll find other people trying to take similar paths, but they may just stay in sales engineering.
Sure.
Or there's things that they find and they really like, but entrepreneurism is the thing that I kind of grabbed onto when I was younger, and that I still feel very passionate about.
Yeah, and it's, probably a great entrepreneur has the things they succeeded in and failed in that taught them what they know and has allowed them to get to that spot. I mean, you talked about your time doing the product work and the product development. Cyxtera has a number of products that customers are interacting with, but talk about the digital exchange offerings and today how customers are, finding those valuable.
I was thinking about, we did talk about 4 years ago, and at the time we spoke, a lot of what we were doing was very early. What I would say is the first 100 customers that you get on any new product are the most difficult. And since we've met, it's really just exploded. And I think about the original vision for our digital exchange. So digital exchange for us is a couple of concepts. One is it's a network fabric that we install in every data center. And it's inside the data center. It's not intended to be used externally. And so that's the primary thing that we built. And one of the reasons we built it and why we call it an exchange is it allows our customers to connect to other services and consume them. And so what's happened over time is we built it originally just to create that connectivity layer. And what's happened is it's become a foundational network that allows our customers to assemble hybrid IT solutions. It's kind of almost like a spine almost. And so that's been really exciting to see. We've actually launched a number of new capabilities on top of the digital exchange. So originally it was a connectivity layer. It led us to launch bare metal, which I think we talked a little bit about last time. Bare metal is something that's a little bit different at Cyxtera than where you hear from most vendors.
Okay, what makes it different?
It's that it's really about colocation, right? And what I mean by that is every one of our customers are shipping equipment to the data center to be installed. And so why can't we work with those same vendors, have them pre-installed, connect them to our automated network, and allow you to buy it colo one device at a time? And the reason I say it's different is we're not doing managed services. We're really literally delivering what you were going to buy anyway on demand. Now it gives you the flexibility to use whatever standards you have or to leverage a managed service provider to actually, and we have a lot of managed service providers in our ecosystem. And so the reason we were able to launch that is because of the automation in the digital exchange. And I think the reason that it's working is that we created software that allows our customers to access the network and make changes to the network like it's their own network. So it doesn't feel like this massive, if you've ever worked in IT, to be able to make a network change, you have to jump through all kinds of hoops. You have to go through change windows, and you have to talk to network engineering and all these different things. We created software to allow our customers to interact with their part of the network directly in real time, so it feels like it's their own network. And so I think that's the thing we're most proud of. We've done a number of other things. We now can allow customers to instantly connect to cloud. So whatever they want to make in their hybrid IT solution, instantly connect to IP bandwidth. So there is no provisioning time. It's literally how fast you want it, and it's turned on within a few seconds. And then the thing that we're working on now that I'm actually most excited about, this has actually been originally part of our vision, but now we're actually starting to see it happen. We just launched something this year called Smart Cabinets.
Okay.
And what Smart Cabinets is doing is it allows our customers to leverage our digital exchange network fabric as their core network. And so why is that different? Most colocation, when a customer buys a series of racks or a cage or a suite, the first thing they have to install is a core network. They have to buy a core router, core switch, and that's the foundational thing. And it takes a while to actually build that, and you put a firewall there is typically what happens. What if in the future, let's say you want to buy 5 racks because you have some devices to deploy, and you don't have to provision a core network before that. You can literally walk in the data center, open the rack, plug in the device, do a patch panel to a port, get on the software and enable it, and it's live on the network. That kind of changes the game a little bit.
So significant time savings.
It's time savings. It's reduction in investment in the network itself.
Yeah, okay.
And the way we built the digital exchange fabric is it's not all or nothing. It's you can do it at different levels. You can use it just for the exchange to connect to other things like the cloud. Or you can use it as the core and deploy your own top-of-rack switches. Or you don't even have to buy top-of-rack switches.
Yeah.
And so we're super excited about this because if you think about multi-tenant data center customers, I'm not talking about hyperscale where they buy the whole building. What they're trying to do is they're trying to break bulk of the generators and the UPS and the cooling equipment. But what if they could break bulk also on the network? Right? To us, we think this is a pretty exciting new product for us, and we think it has a lot of potential long term. My personal belief, if we go all the way back when Amazon took off, I think one of the reasons it was so successful initially is because an IT engineer could go spin up a workload and not have to have a network engineer there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there was networking was native to that platform. And I think we can figure out a way where colocation can have the same kind of impact, where you can ship, install, plug in devices, make them live on the network, and interface with your network through our software, and never have to actually deploy a network or have a network engineer involved.
Well, there's so many, there are many inefficiencies in the colocation, model, and so it's interesting to see companies really try to attack not just the power, space, and cooling, but certainly the network side too. And at least from our perspective, that has become such an more important part of the data center users' journey to efficiency and utilizing cloud resources, and everything they're trying to build depends on that network, it working smoothly and as quickly as possible. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that concept of efficiency that you're describing is really the heart of a lot of the innovation we're focused on. If you think about bare metal, what if you only had to buy colo for the devices that you need instead of over-provisioning and hoping you build into it?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Same thing with a network. When you buy a core network, you're not buying for the first day you take production, because what you're buying for is some future point that may or may never come.
Yep.
So you've over-provisioned your network infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so I think that whole idea is what I meant by when I said break bulk.
Yep.
Right? Which is, okay, we'll make the major investment and put the heavy network platform in the data center, and now you can leverage it and only use what you need. And over time, if you decide you want to build your own core network, that's fine. Sure. It's an easy migration, right? But you don't have to make that investment up front.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned hyperscale companies before. I think if you look at kind of the story of the industry over the last several years, it's a lot of it's been dominated by their growth and the changes. But beneath that has been the enterprise user really growing. In fact, I would say before the pandemic, it felt like smaller financial companies, technology companies, insurance companies were really starting to, maybe grow more than they had. Then the pandemic hit. I think a lot of those groups turned internal and paused for a little bit. But at least for the last 12 to 18 months, those companies seem to have some larger infrastructure requirements. So, and maybe you could speak to how those different groups utilize the network, or those different groups are interacting with the Cyxtera platform, because I really think that the hyperscale demand ebbs and flows. There's going to be times where we have hundreds of megawatts of absorption, and there's going to be periods of time where there's not a lot. But those enterprise customers, they're really valuable. And so how do you see them, interacting today with the Cyxtera platform?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the thing that we've tried to do is develop what I call, and I get teased for this sometimes, like a set of Legos for our customers to design whatever they want. Custom Legos, right? Not custom Legos, but custom solutions. Yeah. And so if you look at the different verticals, they all use different Legos in different ways. And so what are the Legos? One is colo, but underneath colo, you have different levels of power densities that customers use depending on their workloads. We have connectivity. So we have different network solutions, including access to cloud or access to some of these other network providers. We have bare metal, which is more like on-demand colo that you can augment. And then finally is all the different technology service providers that are already in our facility. So the one thing that's different with a hyperscaler is you have that one mega customer there. For us, we literally have hundreds of customers in these data centers, and a large percentage of them are offering solutions, like storage solutions or artificial intelligence computing, or all kinds of different things. And so if you look at like financial services, they use different Legos than maybe our life sciences customers. So financial services, a lot of it's about connectivity to the other service providers so they can get access to information. But they're also processing data, so they have some high compute requirements. They're starting to leverage artificial intelligence more. So that's how they're doing that. I was with a life sciences customer just the other day, and they take tissue from patients and process it to look for cancer or other types of diseases. The actual extraction of that they do local, but they do all the computing within the data center. Does that make sense? And so for them, it's all about high performance computing and also storage. And so understanding the different storage solutions that were native in the data center that they were in, they were highly interested in. For all kinds of reasons, not just primary storage, but also archival and backup. They just had a lot of interest. So, and the other one I was thinking about is federal. Federal is another vertical that has a completely different set of requirements. They're primarily focused on network security.
Makes sense.
And so when we built the digital exchange, we built it so that we could get FedRAMP High as part of that network design, which we've been able to achieve. We're a FedRAMP High ready provider. And so they're all about making sure that they can secure not only the networks and the devices that are in the networks, but also how people can access it externally and how it's being monitored.
Interesting.
Right? So they're all using some of these Legos in different ways. But I already told you one of our primary customers are the CSPs themselves. We're not necessarily talking about the mega hyperscalers, but there's all these different solution providers, and they're using us as their primary data center platform. And they're more interested in the fact that we have so many other customers they can target when they come to the data center. And so,
I totally get
and that's something we actively help them with. When they show up, we introduce them to as many of our customers, because to me, if I can create a connection between those two, it's a win for the enterprise, because now they have a high-tech solution they leverage, and it's a win for the solution provider because now they have a customer and revenue in the data center, and the likely chance either one of them is going to leave goes down by a few percentage points. And so that's why we're trying to drive that connectivity. Yeah,
it's been interesting to watch the hyperscale companies with like their smaller demand is, sometimes it's 4 to 8 megawatts, and those type of deployments can fit, perfectly within the Cyxtera platform, and then other customers can leverage what those services are. The other thing that's been interesting with maybe the growth in the hyperscale sector has been there's been data center operators traditionally that would go after enterprise customers that I think have turned their sights on just the hyperscale companies. So I think there's a smaller group of data center operators that are doing what you all are, which is really creating solutions that can work with retail companies, that can work with financial companies, technology companies. And it's one of the reasons why there's very little supply, across the U.S. for enterprise users to access today. So it's been really interesting to see because I never would have thought that would have happened, but it's taking place today.
Well, Nelson, our CEO, always says it's easier just to build the large-scale facilities and sell to a single customer than it is to build the services you need to deliver to all the enterprise. We can do both, right? And we have, the biggest thing that we focus on, if we create the right innovation story, it applies to the enterprise, but it also, certain components of it apply to some of the bigger companies as well. They want access to the same things. They may not use the same Legos. But the fact that we have an enterprise customer base in a campus that they may want to participate in is a huge win for them. And some of the innovation that we've built resonates with them as well. It's a primary differentiator for our business. But to your original point, we are completely focused on that customer base. If we can enable them, then and become a top service provider for those type of customers, then it allows us to compete on all fronts.
How has the portfolio, like the actual facilities that you all have, changed over the last 4 years? I mean, I know a lot has happened, but talk about some of the changes.
So when I think about our portfolio, we've actually announced a number of expansions in our key markets. We've added a couple markets. One of the announcements made earlier this year is we've opened in India based on customer demand. And so we continue to expand our environments and in our markets. And the good news is, like with some of the supply chain issues that have shown up, is we've had good capacity in our core markets where our customers reside. And we've already had a number of expansion projects in flight prior to some of the constraints. And so we're in a pretty good position right now, and we're starting to see that some of those things are starting to ease up. So sometimes in life, it's better to be in the right place at the right time. You could say it was done on purpose, and clearly that was what we did on purpose. But we, sometimes you're fortunate in that we've had great capacity. We've been able to expand based on our customers' needs. And we went public just over a year ago, and part of that is that we do have ambitions to continue to add more dots to the map and continue to grow in our key markets based on customer demand.
Yeah, and it's more important today than ever to have that global offering, to have the ability to serve someone in Chicago and London in the same way, or in India, when those applications need to be there. It's a big advantage. And I think that just that global view is really important today.
It is. I was on with a customer this week, fast-moving customer. They show up and they want to deploy across 7 markets to start with. Yeah. Right? That's how they want to do that. I met with another company just real recently. I met the CIO. And when I started in this industry, there was a huge effort, especially after M&A, to consolidate all these data centers into a centralized data center. And it seems to me that there's a strong trend now where there are actually CIOs that are building a distributed data center architecture. And I'm not just talking about the public cloud usage. I'm talking about their own data centers. They would prefer to actually press the data back into the markets for all kinds of reasons. Some of it has to do with data sovereignty. Some of it has to do with just the way they've organized their business. And so these distributed architectures, it's been one of those things that people have talked about for a long time, but the underlying operating systems and database structures didn't really support early adoption of that for all companies, right? In some companies, they built their app from the day one, but an enterprise who has legacy apps and all these things, it's now to the point where we're starting to see customers, when they're buying from us, they like to buy for a single application in a distributed manner from day one. And so that's where having a large footprint really helps them, because it allows them to deploy into key markets and to use a single vendor instead of having to negotiate with multiple separate data center companies.
Yeah, I think the maybe saved pain of having to do that is one thing. And also, too, a lot of those companies don't have necessarily the procurement staff to go and, do 7 different, agreements with different vendors. So, that's a big advantage. What have you seen the supply chain, and maybe where we are today with supply chain challenges with maybe Cyxtera as a provider, but then also like users? Are you seeing them, have challenges with actually saying, hey, we're we're signing to take our space in January, but then equipment doesn't show up, or kind of what have you seen as it relates to that?
Yeah, so I'd say at a very high level, the supply chain as it affects us consuming infrastructure to turn on. I mean, I told you, we kind of right place, right time. We have one project for a customer that's been delayed minor. We're talking about manageable timeframes. But that hasn't affected us. And, knock on wood, I'm hopeful that, some of these, still there's all kinds of things that could continue to affect the supply chain. As far as our customers and their deployment times, I expected a little bit more delay. I would say that there's minor delays, but they're being scrappy in the way that they're sourcing their equipment. And so our activation times for our customers have been minorly affected, not significantly affected.
That's great.
One of the things that we have seen, though, is a openness to consider digital exchange as a network platform, or bare metal that we have in inventory.
Oh, interesting.
Because they may have some sourcing problems. They're like, hey, let's take a look at this. And so the number of customers that are buying multiple Legos in the first order has really gone up for us, because they're looking at some of these different ways, because they may be experiencing supply chain issues. So, but we haven't seen a significant delay in activations for customers to this point, and hopefully that's a trend that will continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's good news. It's been interesting to see. I mean, obviously it's something that's affected, certainly the world, and then our industry in different ways. But when you break it down, I think there are groups that, from a timing perspective, for maybe the customers that they serve, have been less impacted by what's been going on, and also too maybe operating practices that maybe set them up more for success than others. Where do you feel like the industry goes from here? As we think about several years out, I mean, there's so many ways someone could take a question like this, but where you sit with the customers that Cyxtera has, where do you think the industry will be in 5 years related to what their needs are, how you're consuming infrastructure? What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to take that one. Like you said, I think the one thing that historically, I'm saying historically, I'm not saying now, but historically, data centers are almost like a specialized real estate. And I think they're becoming a little bit more technology-centric, right? And so we have a big focus on what we call delivering cloud-like colocation, right? Because if you think about, and this is one of the things you and I talked about last time,
Yeah.
if you think about when someone thinks about colo as an option to deploy infrastructure, they think about it takes months to deploy.
Yep.
And as long as that's happening, there's a missed opportunity.
Sure.
Right? And so we need to find out ways. Now, clearly you can't build a 50 megawatt data center from the ground up in months, right?
Yeah.
In a month. But for the multi-tenant data center customer, or what we call the retail customer, we can make our solutions way more accessible and give them all the benefits of colo, but at the speed of cloud. And so that's one of the things that we're focused on. I think another thing that I think is a big part of the data center, at least the multi-tenant data center future, is historically interconnection was all about north-south connectivity. And what I mean by that, it's about attaching to a network that leaves when you want to leave the building and come back in, north-south. What we're starting to see, and we're going to really try to accelerate, is what I call east-west connectivity, which is within the market, or within a campus, or within a data center. Our customers connecting to each other, right? Because that gives them a lot more capability. So if you think about an enterprise, and this has happened, I've had several customers I've met with recently. They start with just wanting colo, and then they learn about what's available, and they end up buying a combination of colo, bare metal, low latency cloud connections, and also buying solutions from the other providers that sit within the same facility or in the same market. And so now you have an enterprise that kind of gets a one-stop shop when they come to a facility. I'll give you some examples. We have a customer who was deploying a new application, and they needed some storage, but instead of buying traditional storage that they put in their colo that's dedicated to them, they end up selecting a storage provider that was in the same facility, right? And so now you're starting to actually create a full IT architecture based on the different capabilities. And so what that really means is I think that the data center becomes more of a thriving marketplace, right? Where people connect to each other. And there are different ecosystems. Sometimes there's vertical ecosystems, like we'll have a market where there's a lot of financial institutions, they want to connect to each other. But I feel like we can create an IT ecosystem.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And you show success in one market, they'll deploy in every market.
Interesting.
We have one of our partnerships, a company called Cyxtera. They started in a few data centers, and now they've deployed in nearly every market we have. And they want to offer that as an augmented solution. What we're in it for is to sell more data centers and build more data centers. So whatever, if they grow, whether it grows in their cage or a customer's cage, I don't really care. But to me, I think this concept of data centers as an ecosystem, data centers as a thriving marketplace, I think beyond just north-south connectivity to network carriers, right? To me, I think that's a big part of where this is headed. And that can actually be replicated in any colo market in the world. So you build a set of Legos, in the way I described it earlier. If there's a new edge market that seems to be growing, that can be deployed there in the same way it can be a primary market, right? And so you create the right solution set, you can follow the markets as they continue to grow.
Yeah. Well, Randy, thank you so much. I mean, I love the colo at the speed of cloud. Is that the kind of tagline y'all are using? That's a really great concept. And it's fun to, certainly get to chat with you about where Cyxtera is. I think it's cyxtera.com is y'all's website. So if people are listening and they want to learn more about Cyxtera, you can do that. As you mentioned, global data center portfolio, not just here in the U.S., but Canada, Europe, India. So check it out, cyxtera.com. Randy, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.